And I'm going to cover a lot in a very small amount of time because I was asked to sort of focus on retention, but you can't focus on retention without talking about attraction and development and a whole bunch of other things. So what I'm going to talk about here is attraction with recruitment selection, best practices, development, orientation and training, and then retention, motivation, and engagement. But you can't really talk about those three things independently. They really do merge and interact with one another. Think of them as gears, and I started using them as gears, but I was too lazy to update it for this presentation. Just imagine them just interacting and moving each other, because if you have a poor attraction strategy, doesn't matter what your development, what your retention is, people aren't going to stay because you're not getting the right people into your department. If you have a poor development strategy, it doesn't matter how amazing the people are, they're not going to stick around with you because there's no reason to stick around. And then no matter if you have a great strategy, you develop your people, but if you're not hitting sort of the key 6 things that people are looking for, again, they're not going to stick around. And statistics say right now, you're lucky to have a person between 2 to 3 years. If you kept to a person or held on to a person for 3 years, that's a success story. So, and everything else then points to culture. And my favorite definition of culture is the worst behavior that your company is willing to tolerate defines your company culture. Right? So if your company is willing to tolerate swearing and pushing, that's your company culture. If your company is willing to tolerate lying, setting up other people, that's your company culture. It doesn't matter what your statement says, but what is the worst behavior that your company is willing to tolerate and allow people to move forward. And that goes for your senior managers. A lot of senior managers' bad behavior is protected. Why? Well, because they bring in a lot of money, or that manager, yes, he might be a bully, but he's very profitable. Well, that's the worst behavior that your company is willing to tolerate. And what does that say to others? So, no matter what your strategy is going in, if you have a culture that is counterintuitive or counterproductive to it, you're going to just be spinning your wheels. So I just want to leave that as a sort of point to think about. So recruitment, it needs to be part of your mission and vision statement, and it needs to be in your recruiting. What is your mission? What is your vision? Because you want the people with the same values to apply for those jobs. So if your mission and vision statement is to make the world a better place or to be more green, whatever your organization is, that you are a green organization and you try to put the smallest carbon footprint possible, well, you don't want people who are driving up with Dodge 350s, diesel engines, and keep their cars running for 20 minutes when it's like -10 as part of, because they don't hold the same values as you do. So part of your culture, and you need to know what your culture is, and you need to be looking in your recruitment strategy for those the people that are being interviewed. Do they share the same common values as you do? So in culture, there should be a core, 3 or 4 core values that everyone shares in their organization. So is that honesty? Is that integrity? Is that hard work? Is that saving the planet? Whatever it may be. But make sure you're able to pick out 3 or 4 core values and be able to assess somehow in the interview process, does that person share those values as your company? Now, what your company's values on paper are and what they truly are on day-to-day may be misaligned. So don't be so much inclined to, okay, take it from your website, post it in your job posting, but truly, it's the nice, what it should be and what it is, and focus on what it is. Have measurable goals for your candidates, so how many people are coming in, going out, what's your turnover rate, so have metrics in there to see whether you're successful or not in your applicant tracking and your hires, because Just because you hired 50 people doesn't mean it was successful. How many of those 50 people stayed the first year, the second year, the third year? Job analysis, no one wants to do this. And what we tend to do is we tend to take the job description and we tend to post it on our website, which is good. It's a quick and easy way to do it, but we're also looking, we want to attract people. So just posting a job description on your website isn't enough. You want to give that wow factor, that interest factor. Why do people want to work for your organization? Going along with measurable goals, your recruitment strategy and evaluation. So out of the 3 or 5 people that you brought into your interview process, how many of those people did you hire? If you interviewed 10 people and you hired one of those 10 people, did you waste a lot of time interviewing the 9 others? Were they really that closely aligned on their resumes that was really hard to pick which ones? Or is it a legacy thing that your company has a policy that you must interview 5 people for every position? Or did you interview just that one person that applied and now you hired the best of the worst? Right? There's no one else, and being, whether it's right or wrong, it's irrelevant to whether you're measuring it or not. Structured selection process. So usually most interviews, especially if they're done by managers, you sit down for about an hour and you talk about everything except the job. And you talk about your interests, and the more the manager likes that person, the higher the chances are that that person's going to get hired, regardless of whether that person's a good fit for the organization, or has the skill set, or has the ability to develop within the organization. Exit interviews. So how many of you here do exit interviews? So question for you, should you do exit interviews on all your people leaving? No. Who should you do exit interviews on? Only the good people leave. Right? So I always use A, B's, and C's. Right? So there's A players, pro stars, B's, potential pro stars, and C's, a lost cause that really they just got a job because they were the best of the worst. Or they've been with the organization so long, it would cost more money to get rid of them than it would be to keep them employed and that sort of thing. So the idea here is when your A players leave, you really want to know why they left. If your C players leave, you have a small party, celebrate, and you move on, right? Because they really solved an issue for you. But when your A players leave, the people that really make an impact to your organization, you really want to find out why. Because if you interview everyone, and you interview your C players, it might take you down a rabbit hole, or it might misdirect. Well, you don't pay enough, I didn't feel loved, I didn't feel recognized, I didn't feel respected. Well, you were a terrible employee that no one liked, that you sabotaged other people's work with, hence why you were paid poorly, you were ignored, and you weren't recognized because there's nothing to recognize you for. So I would just argue that you don't want to interview everyone that's leaving. You do only want to interview people that are truly making an impact in your organization. And then throughout this whole thing, you would evaluate, adjust, test, and repeat your processes. Just because you've done a certain process doesn't mean it's successful. You need to look at how successful. Can I make it better? What percentage of people did we apply? One of the things that we did was we spent a whole bunch of money on a specific job posting site. And what we realized is we had a large number of candidates from that postings, but we never hired anyone from that site. And so we were spending a lot of money, getting a lot of candidates, doing a lot of work, but not once did we hire a single candidate from that job site. So we stopped posting on that job site. Saved us money and saved us time by the reduction of candidates applying for those positions. So your job posting, you really want to think about a focus on the characteristics of your organization. Location. So how far is the location from the employee that's being hired? Because if they have a commute of 2 or 3 hours a day, chances, now Red Deer's different because I know there's a lot of sort of outskirts that people do drive an hour and a half and it's a sort of a lifestyle and they're accustomed to it. So I would argue if that person's past history shows that they're a commuter, that's fine. But if their last job was like 2 blocks away, and now they have to drive an hour and a half, chances are within 6 months or a year, they're going to be looking for other work. The size of the company. There's a magical number where everyone loves each other like family to where everyone is a cold, heartless, corporate drone. Does anyone know what that magical number of the size of the company is? Okay, so I'll give you a couple hints. What is the average number of Facebook friends a person usually has? Has anyone heard that statistic? It's 150. Okay, the most a person can have, most relationships a person can have is about 150 people before things start breaking down and you start having conflicts. The people who have like 2,000 friends are just attention seekers. they don't truly have 2,000 friends. Yeah. Or they met somebody on the street. You have a Facebook account.
Sure.
That's Connect. Thank you. The Hutterites at 150 split their colonies into 2, and they have a lottery of you go on this side and you go on this side, because they have found that once a colony gets to 150, things start to, more conflict arises, more politics, the group
cohesiveness.
Thank you. Breaks down. I need more coffee. Starts to break down. And so this also is a very interesting phenomenon between headquarters and branches in an organization. Because headquarters tends to have more people. And it tends to have maybe 100, 200 people, 300, 1,000, 10,000. And small branches tend to have 10, 20, 50. And so the smaller branches of an organization tend to have a very warm family, will take care of each other, don't worry about that vacation time you're coming. They're very lax on processes. Where the headquarters, which has a lot more people and has to deal with a lot more conflict, has set processes, treats everyone equally the same, because otherwise they'll get into trouble. There's no favoritism. Everyone has to follow the same policies and procedures. And you can see that, especially we have an organization that has multiple branches. Our headquarters has over 100 people, all the other ones has less than 50. And you can really see the cultural differences and dynamics of those organizations. Now, there's not much that you can do other than understand and work with those cultural differences, that just whatever your current culture is in your organization in Red Deer is not going to be the same as in Lethbridge. It's not the same as in Brantford or in Calgary. Just being aware and not trying to McDonaldize that the cultures will be the same across the entire province or the entire country. Industry. McDonald's has a turnover rate of 150%. Is that a healthy turnover rate? For McDonald's, it is. A 4% turnover rate might not be healthy either. It depends on your industry. Because for McDonald's, it's easier to teach somebody how to make fries in 15 minutes than it is to sort of try to get bonuses and share plans and points and the whole system. So they actually have a strategy that allows them to have a 150% turnover rate so that they can quickly pay people, have low wage reduction, low overhead costs, and that's their strategy. So being aware of what the norm is for your industry. Trades has a very much different turnover rate than say retail, than say accounting firm that, you know, if they have a 1% turnover rate in 10 years, that's a good thing, right? So how you're structured? Or do you have like 5 managers before you can see the owner, or do you have a flat where anyone can see the owner? Reputation. It's kind of hard to find people when you have a terrible reputation for your industry. Your recruitment process. Sort of like dating. I've always looked at recruitment processes as dating. So if you ask somebody out on a date and they ignored you, never answered, were really mean to you, chances are you'll never ask them for a date now. But if you're like, oh, you know what, I'm not in a very good position right now, but maybe in the future, if you try to reapply, maybe we could, chances are you might ask them for another date. And the same thing is with a recruitment process. If you send your application into a dark hole and you never hear anything ever, chances are you'll never apply for that again. But if you send in an application and, hey, we received your application, we'll get back to you within 2 or 3 weeks. If we don't get back to you, chances are you didn't get it, but please reapply maybe when there's another posting available. The increase of that individual applying again might be better, and who knows, maybe in 3 to 5 years, that person's skill set will be much better than when they initially applied. And then lifestyle. Some people, depending on where they are in their lives, they have small children, no children, grown up, children that are grown up, teenagers. They will be looking for different things, flexibility, time off, vacation, benefits, all that, those kinds of things. So being aware of a person's lifestyle and whether it fits in your organization. If you require somebody to never be late, don't hire people with small children. Yes, that's discrimination. I am aware of that. But especially if somebody has a 1-year-old, chances are that the baby's going to be sick, it's going to throw up, it's going to slow you down. You can't just leave with a baby. The daycare's going to close down. That person's going to need a little bit more flexibility. As long as you are aware of that, and that it's an expectation up front, you're going to really reduce a lot of friction and conflict. I will say this, before I had children, I did not have any empathy for people with small children about being late or having issues or sick days or daycare counseling in on them. It wasn't until I myself went through it, it's like, oh, this is hard. And there's a lot of elements that are beyond my control that really affect whether I can make it into work at all. Because your child throws up, they're calling you saying, pick up your child. And you have no option, otherwise they're going to kick you out of the daycare. All right, so job postings. You want an informative job title. So it's not, if you're looking for a technician level 1 and that's what you call your position, don't call it that. Call it to whatever the common use of the term or title is. And so ask your people, if you were looking for a job, what job title would you be looking for? And so our official job title is Heavy Equipment Technician. That's the official title given to our mechanics. But no mechanic goes Heavy Equipment Technician. They go Heavy Duty Mechanic, they go Diesel Mechanic, they go Heavy Equipment Mechanic. And so just being aware of what terms your people use really increases the chances of them finding that job posting online. Using keywords, what are your people most interested in? And so what I tend to do is when I get a job application in, I send an automatic response to a survey and I ask them, where do you look? What key terms do you look for? What are some of the key things that you're really interested in a job ad? And one of those key terms was job stability. So in all my ads, I put in, do you want job stability? If so, apply with an organization that has been in the industry for 46 years, right? And so one of those things that if you know what your people are looking for, chances are you can create a better job posting. Why is your company great? Where it's located. Put in the address in the job ad, right? Because it will deselect people that might be, oh, I'm great for this job. Hold on, it's an hour and a half away. And we tend to have an ego, so everyone should know what my company is, right? How could you not know what my company is? So put the address in your job ad. What position, the sort of daily tasks, and give a realistic job preview. Don't all the fancy stuff. Like if the majority of the stuff is terrible job things that they have to do every day, put in the terrible things that they have to do every day, not the wonderful things they might do once a year. The must-haves and the nice-haves, and break them up. This is what we really want. So if you don't have 5 out of 5 of these things, we're not looking at you. And Indeed has a great candidate tracking system where you can actually ask questions for the people to answer, and will automatically mark those people for you. You know, they have 3 out of the 5 things that you're looking for. So I highly recommend using Indeed on that. Don't cut and paste your job description, be genuine and clear. Just like when you're writing a cover letter, you should start from scratch. Write your job postings from scratch the first time that you're doing this. Try to be as genuine as possible. Talk to your managers, talk to your employees. Why do you like working here? What makes this job great? And then put that in your job posting. Regular daily tasks, jump into action. So how can you make sure that somebody applies right away rather than they sort of take a look and it's like, I'll apply next week? Closing date, right? It's really one of the few ways where you can really click in and then do the closing date and then repost the job after the closing date and make it easy to apply. And so the more different ways you can have to apply, so whether it's still fax, there's still people applying via fax, email, walking in, the address, and also your website. If it's very difficult to apply for your website, we don't have to worry about it now during a recession, but when on the peak time, if your job posting was too high and you applied and you spent 15 minutes filling out a page, hit next, and it's like, thank you for completing 5 out of 95% of your job posting, please continue on. People, I don't need this. I don't need that job that bad. I'm going to go somewhere where it's easier to apply. So what I always say is make the first step very easy. And then once you have them, then you can be a little bit harder on. So, getting their resume in and that sort of thing so that you have their information. And if you're interested in them, that you then do a phone interview or you make them fill out a survey and questionnaire. Do that after they apply, not before they apply. All right, sources. So these are all the various different sources that people can apply. Does anyone know where most successful candidates come from? Internal referrals and word of mouth. That is your most successful candidate pool. Even look at your own staffing levels. I can guarantee you your A players are usually people that have been referred by other individuals. Because good people know good people. Bad people know lazy people.
Doesn't that cause conflict of interest to a point though? There's some
Absolutely.
companies that won't hire people that know people because then it is conflict of good people.
You do. So here's the workaround on it. What you do is you never want to hire, so if there's no work, so imagine this is your employee and there's a circle around your employee of all the people that they know. You don't want to hire their initial circle, you want to hire their second degree circle. So what you do is you don't say, hey, do you know any friends? And this is like active recruiting. You go, hey, do you know any friends that have a good skill set that may not be interested in working for us, but knows other people in that industry? Sure, I know X. You go through X, and then you ask the second degree, who do you know, right? And that way it's sort of like, you don't want to date your initial circle of friends, you want to date the friends of friends. And then that way, if things go badly, you haven't lost that initial relationship.
So when somebody comes to you and says, hey, I know you're looking for somebody and I have somebody that I know, that have been, always consider them,
don't dismiss them and at least have a conversation with them. And then say, you know what, I don't think this is a good fit, but if you know of anyone else that you might be able, and that's what recruiters do. Recruiters go in and they contact initial people that they're interested in. And then they go, well, okay, it's not a good fit, but do you know somebody with your similar skill set, that sort of thing, go to your second degree? Absolutely. Everything else is kind of, in the trades, walk-ins are huge. But walk-ins are only good if that person who's walking in has a really good skill set. There isn't any, somebody with no skills that's going to come into a walk-in and say, I'd like to see the manager, and the manager going, fantastic, I was just waiting for somebody to walk in, right? A walk-ins only work if you have a really good skill set. All right, resume fallacies. All right, so when you're looking at resumes, what do you think the most common lie in a resume is? By the way, there's a hint on this graph. Dates, okay? So one of the things, people always say that references are a waste of time. Really, references are a great way to check dates. And what people tend to mostly do is if they have 3 jobs, they will merge and get rid of the middle job, right? So they'll say that they worked somewhere longer and somewhere they started somewhere earlier to try to hide that third job. I actually just had somebody apply. I've been with my organization for 10 years. I had somebody apply who worked for us for 5 years ago, that worked for us for 9 months, and on their resume it said they worked for us for 3 years, right? And so I know that this happens on a regular basis. Titles is another one. So this is stuff that you want to check on the references to the HR, calling past employers and so like, did this person hold this responsibility? I had a person apply for a health and safety role, and they said they're a health and safety coordinator, and they were on this health and safety committee, but they were a laborer. There was nothing that, so references are a really good way of validating titles. Salaries, people always say they make more. Sort of records of places things they've done, accomplished, how much money they brought into an organization and that sort of thing. Education, the most common one is you put post-secondary and you put an end date that it looks like you graduated, but that just means the year that you went or the year that you dropped out, right? And so that sort of thing. And then designations, using CHRP instead of CPHR and that sort of thing.
I'll get to that.
So, in the selection process, you do want to have open communications with everyone, and this is very easy. How many of you use Outlook as your sort of primary source of email? It's very easy to set up a rule that says set up HR at whatever, any email that goes in there, and only use it for your recruiting process. Say, it's a rule, automatic response, hey, we received your email, thank you very much. We will be in contact with you within the next 3 weeks. If we are not, unfortunately, you have not been selected for this role. At least they have something that and it reduces the amount of calls. Hi, this is Billy, did you get my resume that I sent in 15 minutes ago, right? And so, and then inform them of the selection process. How long is it going to be? And I know that sometimes a manager changes their mind and I don't want to hire a person anymore. You know what? Let all those people know that there's nothing that they did not to get the job. We decided not to hire at this time. We're sorry for any inconvenience this might have caused. Right? So anything that happens in that process, and again, Indeed makes it very easy. That it says, do you want to send an email to all applicants? You hit yes, you write them email, and Indeed will automatically say, Dear Bob, and their names and everything like that. So again, I highly recommend Indeed and it's free, that's why. Indeed gives you a free applicant tracking system. And then rejection letters. Once it's been closed, send everyone a rejection letter. Just, we went with a different candidate, thank you very much for your application.
Did you send it to anyone that you didn't interview?
Yes. Right? And again, it's that sort of communication line, right? You want to leave them with a sort of, hey, because 90% of companies do not communicate at all with their candidates. You want to be that distinction that you are an organization that applies for, that communicates with your candidates. Again, it's best off, it's not a rule or anything like that, it's just the best practice.
You get 200 resumes and then just come on email and you just email them all.
Yeah. And you go like this: Control V, paste, Control Enter, which is automatic send.
Okay.
Right? Like Control Enter on Outlook, just hit send. And I literally go and then shift down, and I do shift down, Control V, Enter, shift down, Control V, Enter, shift down, Control V, Enter. Right? But Indeed actually makes it a lot easier to automatically send that rejection letter, and it's free. I'm not paid by Indeed, by the way. I'm just a big fan. All right. So one of the great things that you can do with self-assess or in the selection process to help you do to reduce your work is do phone screening interviews. Why do we bring people in for an interview before even seeing whether it's a waste of time or not? So use a phone interview as a way of selecting or deselecting, asking a couple core key questions before you even bring them in. So a key question might be, what are your professional goals? What do you like to do professionally? What don't you like to do professionally? So the person answers, I don't like to do paperwork, and the job requires a lot of paperwork. Well, no matter how amazing they are, they're going to be miserable because your job requires a lot of paperwork. So asking sort of pre-interview questions before bringing them in, use Skype, especially if the area that you are interviewing for is quite large. Why bring them in all the way? Then you gotta go meet them, say, hey, how are you? Walk them through, would you like a coffee? No, okay, have a seat here, whatever it may be. And then when the interview's over, you gotta walk them back and the whole thing. But with a video interview, you just sit, hit enter, you start. Things aren't going well, and you're like, thank you very much, and you can end the interview at any point. And so, by all means, try using a video interview, and this is a good way of deselecting people. So, an A player who doesn't have Skype, who's never Skyped, and you say, we're gonna have a Skype interview, is gonna say, okay. A C player is gonna go, I don't have Skype. We can't have an interview because I don't have Skype. That person has just deselected themselves, right? So again, it's a good way of deselecting, doing tests. So if there's legal questions or basic questions that that person should know for that position, create a 10, 15 question test and put it online. There's Google Drive is a free service you can create your own tests on. You can even use like SurveyMonkey to ask questions and then just look at the answers and use a survey as an exam, right? And so use different methods of reducing the amount of time that you're spending with those candidates. Self-assessment is a really great tool that really is very much similar to questionnaires, where you're asking them to rate themselves on specific skills. And then you tell them that you're going to use that as a reference point to call the references and say, Jimmy has rated themselves a 4 out of 5 on attention to detail. Would you agree with that? And when you tell people that you're going to verify their answers, their honesty level increases exponentially by you just stating the fact that you're going to verify their answers with references or past employers. This doesn't sound interesting, but you really do have to have a standard question for each position, not for the interview, because it doesn't make sense to ask the same questions for an accountant as it does for a mechanic, as it does for a laborer, as it does for an admin assistant. But coming up with a structured interview that when you're interviewing 5 candidates, that you ask them the same questions, because what ends up happening is you interview an orange, an apple, and a pear, and then you pick which fruit you like best. And you're not comparing apples to apples. By having the same set questions for each person, you are able then to see how they answered. And this is my ranking system. Ooh, there's a board there. Can I use that board? Do we have a marker?
Yes.
This is a big prompt. Oh, perfect. So, this is my...
Oh no, it's a filter. It's okay.
This is my rank of how you should rank, perform, or anytime you do any kind of ranking, this is what you should always use as your measure. So, we have all heard of 1 to 5, right? And then we've also heard about 1 to 10. But what happens? So you're ranking somebody from an answer from 1 to 10. And my argument has always been, what's the difference between a 6, 7, and an 8? How do you measure that? What's a 3 and a 4? And so, if somebody doesn't answer well, you're still giving them a point, right? And you're still giving them a 1 for, so it's like a participation point. So my big thing is, and then when you go 1 to 5, you're going to get that manager goes, well, you know what? It was really a 2.5 question, answer. So this is the way I have gotten around it, and it's made my life easier. I have a 0, 1, and a 2. 0, you didn't answer the question. I didn't like your answer, you answered it wrong. You get a 0. You don't get a mark. This isn't elementary school anymore.
This is actually how CPAs do their performance reviews. Though.
Really?
Yeah.
Because they're very smart. One is you liked their answer, but it wasn't exactly what you were looking for. And 2, you loved the answer, right? And here's the great thing. If you have multiple people scoring, chances are this score is going to be a lot closer to your actual numbers than a 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. Because 1 to 10 is really a 1 to 20. And like I've actually had managers that scored somebody like 1.25. Really? You gave them a quarter? Explain this quarter to me. Quantify that quarter for me. So, and of course you will get people that will go, well, this is a 0.5 and this is a 1.5. And it really turns into a 0.5 scale, which is really 1 to 4. But you don't want to say 1 to 4. But at least this way you're reducing the amount of numbers that are in your calculations, keeping it to a much more realistic number. When I score, we were interviewing somebody using this score against a manager that we don't see the same. And I scored his candidate a 69 and he scored his candidate a 74. And we rarely agree on anything, right? And so that in itself really shows that by reducing, and the other thing about this is when you score somebody a 1 and somebody else scores it a 5, they just gave them 5 times as many points. The maximum you can give anyone is 2 more points than you can only double. So that's why it kind of reduces the scoring. My recommendation on here is that you ask them 4 to 8 questions on doing things and 4 to 8 questions on behavioral things, right? And you always want to have them open-ended. So for example, when you ask somebody if the job is very stressful, you don't want to ask them as, do you deal well with stress? Because the answer is yes, I deal well with stress. What you want to ask them is, tell me about a situation that you had to deal with, tell me about your most stressful situation. Well, one time somebody wanted me to order pens, and they didn't say what color. And I didn't know whether I should go with red or blue or black, and I just took a guess and it was blue. Whew, that was I don't want to deal with that again, right? That is a person that cannot deal with high stress situations, right? If picking the color of your pens really brings out a high level of stress in you. So giving behavioral questions, and so the 5 sort of doing and the 5 behaviors. So the stress would be a behavior. The doing is if you are looking for increasing the bottom line. Tell me about an initiative where you increased the company's profitability. Give me an idea that you increased the company's profitability. And if their answer is, I don't have one, they score a 0, right? I never had one. Or they give you an idea and that really isn't answering your question, you give them a 0. They don't know how to do that thing, right? So you're not coaching them into, well, that's not what we're really looking for. If you phrase the question right, so again, 4 to 8 things that they can do, and 4 to 8 behaviors that they can show or they can demonstrate. Applicants, follow-up, limited, right? I got 8 minutes left? Are you serious? Oh, I'm so sorry. So, time for the lightning round. Ready? All right. We started late, did we not? Pretty sure we started late. Your introduction took up like 20 minutes.
You can have some more time.
So,
you can change players up here.
You can have some of mine.
Yeah, it's okay. One of the things, I'm not going to sort of read the sort of tips, but you want to be agreeable to the person that you're interviewing, because if you start judging them from day one, or from the first minute, they're going to be very defensive. So you want to be as open and as friendly as possible, because they will let their guard down. Red flags, negative about past employers, declaring that they want to retire with you. I've never had anyone that has said, I want to retire with this company on like the first interview, I've never had anyone actually hold their word to that. Saying that they've been never sick or late, that's a red flag for me. You can't tell me you've never been late and you've never been sick at all. Giving references that are 5 to 10 years old, and you can't give me your most recent one or even your second previous job. Asking for accommodations right away before even having the job. Asking about or giving vague reasons that they left, and they can't really pinpoint why they left. Oh, we just didn't see eye to eye. How didn't you see eye to eye? We just didn't. New management, right? Just that sort of thing. Give realistic job interviews. No surprise. What you don't want is you don't want any surprises. So if people have to work on the weekend, tell them right away that they have to work on the weekend. If they're on call, tell them you have to work on call. If there's no way of them moving up the corporate ladder, tell them this is the job that you're going to have for life. If we're going to keep you 3 to 5 years in this position, we're going to be happy. Be realistic about that. And my favorite thing to do is you take them for a tour as part of the interview process. This is for like your final hire. And you plant managers around with specific questions. And the manager asks the same question of each candidate. What made you apply? Where are you from? Where are you coming from? Whatever it may be. And see how they interact with people. Because first impressions really matter. And I found this, I had 2 candidates. I had a candidate that I preferred and a candidate B. All my managers preferred candidate B. And my number 1 candidate was didn't get the job, not because of that, but it was very close, and then that really sort of cemented for me. It's like, how can 5 out of 5 managers have a sort of initial reaction that they would want to work with this individual? Reference checks, verify dates, positions, certificates, that sort of thing. Cultural fit. You hear this over and over again. That you want to hire for fit and then skill second. When you choose somebody to hire, make sure that the supervisor who's going to be working day to day is in the interview and is the one that's calling them to give them a job. Because we've all experienced this where we have somebody offer us a job and then we don't work with them at all. But we always in our heads have that person is my true manager. That is the manager of the manager. But if you can have the supervisor who's going to be looking over them on a daily basis, that is going to be responsible for their shift, for the performance review, that person should be the person picking up the phone and offering them the position. Offer of employment. So this one is that before they even start, you want to send them an employment offer with no surprises, and you want to give them a few days or even a week to consider that offer. We usually want people to start start tomorrow. Give them a week to sort of read all that information, provide them with the wage, the supervisor, expectations, benefits. Send them your policy manual. If there's no secret sauce in that policy manual, send them the policy manual. When they're going to get their vacation, what kind of deductions, probationary period. And this is a big one here, change of agreement. This says that we are offering this job today at this salary, at this position with these benefits, and they are not guaranteed to stay for life. Is the sort of, if you Google change of agreement, you can get the wording for it. But this is where employment offers get into an issue of, well, this is what you told me that I was going to get for the rest of my life, if it's worded wrong. So that change of agreement kind of gives you an opportunity. And expiring on a offer. So give them a week. If they don't get back to you a week, it's off the table, right? And then you can either renegotiate if they can't give you a valid reason why they didn't sign. The orientations. Give good swag. Don't give meaningless swag. So give swag that they could actually use on a daily basis. A coffee mug you can use on a daily basis. A mug you can use on a daily basis. A keychain you can use on a daily basis, right? But don't give them what's a useless swag that who has received a useless swag that they couldn't use it for at all?
A stress ball in the shape of a truck.
Stress ball. Right? A shape of a truck.
Oh,
What's
stress ball. What kind of message is that?
Yes, exactly.
Introduce them to your team. Right? Give them a tour of the entire company. I've actually been in a place I worked in our organization for 10 years. There is a place I've never been in, right? Just, there's no reason for me to be in warehouse number 3. Take them out for lunch the first day and tell them that this is a special first day thing. It's not, that this isn't lunch provided every single day or Friday. Give them a buddy, the person that they can go to ask them anything, and make sure that buddy wants to be a buddy, and that they're a good trainer as well, right? Your most senior, talented person might not be a good buddy, right? So, and then touch base a week, a month, and 3 weeks in. You're going to get information overload. So make sure you span it out over a week or 2 week period. Give them in small modules. Give them lots of breaks. Have them shadow some people. Make sure they get introduced to the owner or the highest person in the organization at some point, or even an email. Set expectations. Meaning that you give them the performance review. Here is our performance review, because usually most people see the performance review at their performance, right? So give them, during their orientation, this is how you will be marked. This is what we're looking for. That way, at least from day one, they know what the organization is looking for. Test retention. Have a test after. Do you know where to find this? Do you know if you need to do a requisition? Who do you speak for? That way, at the end, you can see whether you have a successful orientation, information overload, do you need to focus on something, and that sort of thing. We're going to skip this, but industry within training, really what it does is, instead of just showing somebody what you are to do, if you just Google a training within industry, you'll get a video of how to fold a t-shirt. And the idea here is, what you want to do is you want to explain every step and why you're doing that step. Then have them do it and explain each step and why they're doing that step for better retention. And this really matters on sort of labor, manual things that a person is doing. Retention is about 90% higher if you do it this way. You have to provide training, because ultimately it's legally required that a person doing a job be qualified, trained, and sufficiently experienced. And so this really goes into trades. If you have a guy running a bulldozer, just because they've written a bulldozer in the past doesn't mean they've written yours. And if they hurt somebody on day 1 or day 2, well, they've had previous experience, doesn't necessarily mean they were qualified or were experienced on your equipment. And where's your proof? Everyone who is hired should be doing a LIMS test. How many of you did a LIMS test on your first day? Usually I get 0. Yeah. Be aware, majority of people are kinesthetic learners, but how do we teach? Audio and PowerPoint presentations and that sort of thing. People need to do things in order for them to understand. Remember the first 90 days are crucial. If you make a good impression in the first 90 days, chances are you're able to keep them much longer.
So the first 3 days is when they decide.
It's the first day, all right? And like literally is, even in the interview process, well, I'll stick around here for a bit and then I'll see what happens. But it really is, but the better experience, the more support you can provide in the 90 days, not just the first week, but in the 90 days, chances are you're going to be able to keep it in. Engagement doesn't mean productivity, okay? If your staff are engaged, it technically might mean less productivity because they love it so much and they love talking to people so much and visiting with people so much that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be as productive. Engagement means retention. People are going to stay longer. It doesn't make them more productive. Motivation increases productivity, not retention. And so I'm just going to skip to this, but if you want to motivate people, there's 12 things that you can do in your organization, but truly, if you're looking at the 80-40 rule or 80-20 rule, there's only 6 core things that you need to do in your organization to motivate people. And the core 6 things, so if you're not going to do anything but these things, it's clear expectations, so providing them with what is expected, the right equipment. There's nothing more frustrating than having a computer that's incredibly slow, that you come into work, you boot it up, you get coffee, you chat about your weekend, and maybe by the time you come back, you're ready to work, right? So giving people, it doesn't have to be the latest, greatest equipment, but just the right equipment and working equipment. opportunity to perform, if they like doing something a lot, have them the ability to do that on a daily or a weekly basis, not all the time, but at least if they really enjoy doing something, allow them to do that on a regular basis. Show them recognition. If their direct supervisors could care less about them, there's nothing that you can do. There's no strategy on earth that you can create where they hate their manager or their manager has absolutely no time, energy, or emotional attachment involved to them, and encourage development. And so even if you don't have an opportunity for that person to move into a leadership management role, if you actually put the money and time into that person, they will stay longer with the organization as they're being developed than if they're stuck in a dead-end job. So yes, you're technically providing training for their next employment, but there's no opportunity for them in your organization. At least you can start creating a better, more effective employee. So so those are the critical 6 that if you have to focus on anything, you focus on those 6. The other ones are having an opinion and being able to provide feedback openly, understanding the importance of their position and how it affects others, having a high commitment to quality, having the team trust each other, and doing performance reviews on a regular basis, and showing and giving them an opportunity to grow and develop with the organization. Those are a lot harder than those first 6, right? And studies have shown if you do the first 6, even as a leader, as a manager, as a supervisor, as an employee, your organization becomes a lot more effective. So things to improve. I'm 1 minute over. Yes. So things to improve. The right hire, communication and transparency. So being open, because human nature is that if you don't know anything, you expect the worst thing ever to happen to you, right? I accidentally did payroll once and I forgot to pay an entire division because payroll was on vacation. And so their first reaction wasn't, it's Adam's first time doing payroll, he might have messed up. It was, oh my God, the company is going under. I'm looking for new work, right?
Have you been doing payroll since?
No.
Good.
Payroll always takes it on an off week now. I don't know why. Tribal knowledge. This is the stuff that's not written. So this is the kind of stuff of, who's your best employee? What is the best, most effective process? How do you seal the deal in your organization? That sort of thing. The stuff that's really only your 10, 20, 30-year-old employees that have been with your organization know, and being able to share that with the buddy system. Constant feedback. And you have to pay people fairly. You don't have to pay them the best, but you can't pay them when they're just scraping by and making rent and they can't survive on what they're making, because no matter how wonderful you are, they need to take care of their basic needs and they're going to be looking elsewhere. So paying them a fair market value is very important. Retention killers, lack of communication, insufficient encouragement, inadequate rewards. So if everyone gets a raise regardless after a year, what's the motivation to work harder? I just have to stick around a year. Too much team recognition, not enough individual recognition, and when you push people and burn them out for long periods of time. You can stretch people, but not for an infinite amount of time. So improve your retention process, assist your manager in understanding your individual and department values, provide training and assist in developing a good performance and development plan for your organization. Thank you.
How many minutes over?